And we're live a little bit late today, but it's okay. We're still here. So today I want to talk about the Unholy Alliance. That's the alliance between William Samoei Ruto and Okoth Obado. So how do I begin? Let me begin by stating who she is. There's a lady who died a short while ago. Her name was Sharon Otieno, and she died as in it was just a bloody death. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody, and I hope nobody would ever wish it on me. So what happened with Sharon? It seems that Sharon had sort of like an affair with Governor Obado. I don't think that is in dispute, so I think I'd be correct in saying that. And what happened was that, as with many affairs, a baby, they had a baby, and Sharon was 7 months pregnant, right? And what happened was that there seems to be some disagreement. I think she was extorting a lot of cash from him, because I had one time there was 100K, as in on demand. That's a lot of money. But anyway, he's a governor, so perhaps he's rich. Perhaps Sharon knew what she was doing. But it was pissing the governor off. And now he's a baby, and that's an eternal kind of connection, you get. And I don't think Okoth Obado was ready for that. I don't think he was ready for that. So he had to do something about it. Now, by saying he had to do something about it, I'm not saying he actually killed her, but he might have done something about it. So what happened? Sharon got into contact with a journalist, and then while she was with the journalist, they got kidnapped. Somehow the journalist escaped. People are skeptical about that story. It was a nation media journalist, and he got safe, but Sharon did not get home safe. What happened to Sharon? I read one report where somehow she met with the governor, and the governor was stepping on her head, and then he left her there. And then the vehicle that was used to ferry her to, let's say, her eventual death seemed to be like a county vehicle. It had its tracker disabled on that material night, and then it had it enabled later. So there seems to be some systematic kind of cover up to this story. So what did they do to her? Sharon was 7 months pregnant. They raped her. They raped a 7-month pregnant lady. Yes. And then they stabbed her 8 times. They stabbed her on the neck a couple of times, and in the back a couple of times. It makes you wonder, isn't one stab enough? You have to stab her many times. And then what else did they do? They made sure that they stabbed the abdomen so that they can kill the kid who was inside of her. And they actually killed that fetus. So it was a very malicious kind of death, because you had to eliminate the child was the primary target. Otherwise, you just kill Sharon and then leave her. And then also, why would you rape her? That's kind of like, it was not enough to kill her. You had to shame her. There was some vindictiveness to this murder. And that's a sad part of the story. So she died, and whatever happened, many people were arrested, and so was the governor. And when the governor was arrested, he posted bail after some time. I think after a month in the cells, and all the media focused was on his Sukuma Wiki. And the family seems to be focusing on money, because that's what they want. They don't want anything else. So I just wanted to talk about, recently Governor Obado and William Ruto had sort of like a rally, and it was a big one. There are so many people around, and I call it an unholy alliance. Why? When people are accused of certain crimes, then we should make sure that those crimes, we settle that first, and then now we move on into the business of governing. And when two people are accused of certain crimes, and with strong evidence against those crimes, something comes into play into society, and that's what I wanted to talk about. The Ruto case ended. He went to court. He got free of the ICC, and now he's the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. But he's still a desperate man, because there are still corruption cases against him, like the Weston Hotel and other stuff. They call him. Okay, everybody knows that. Everybody thinks that Ruto is corrupt. So he has a tough hill to climb, and everybody thinks that Obado killed Sharon. So there's a tough hill to climb. Okay, so let me talk about this Unholy Alliance. One, I wanted to talk about what people call the sexual objectification of women, and that's the danger of this kind of trend where women are dying. I remember Masikeino and others, and people view it as such that women eventually they have no inherent value as a person. They're just there as, a sexual tool to use for sex, and then, after it's done, it's over. And I wanted to give another example. Within the Ottoman Empire, the emperor used to have what they call harems. Now, harem is an Arabic word meaning forbidden place. Now, within these harems, there's so many very beautiful women chosen, and they're put in those harems. And then eunuchs are are people who have been castrated. And the emperor would have the harems, the women in those harems guarded by eunuchs, because now the eunuchs can't have sex with the women, right? And mostly those eunuchs are African. They are African. Keep that in mind. Castrating Africans. Anyway, so that the specific purpose of those women was to provide sexual pleasure to the Ottoman emperor, right? And they were also to produce babies. So that was their work: produce babies and produce, sexual pleasure for the emperor. And that's sort of like the sexual objectification of women that I'm talking about. That they have no inherent value. Their purpose only is to have sex. And in this case, I believe that was Sharon's inherent purpose. What Okoth Obado saw in her. He saw in her a tool for sexual pleasure. And when this tool had a baby, things change. And that's what I want to talk about next. When we objectify women, what happens is that their dreams, their aspirations, and their families are worthless. Because it's kind of like a tool. When you have a hammer, the hammer does not have a family. The hammer does not have dreams. The hammer does not have aspirations. It's just a hammer. And it's for hitting nails. And as soon as you finish hitting that nail, you just throw it away. If the hammer gets damaged, you don't take it to a counselor. You just throw it away. And I wanted to give an example of that. I don't know if you guys know this, but the last pharaoh of Egypt, his name was Caesarion, right? He was the son of Julius Caesar. And when Caesar died, Augustus Caesar, we call him Augustus, but at that time he was Octavian. Octavian took the empire. He fought with Mark Antony and then took the empire. But then there was a problem. Caesarion was the son of Caesar. So one day he might claim the empire of Rome, right? And so Octavian could not have that. Caesarion had become an inconvenience. And when people become an inconvenience, they have to be dealt with. So how did he deal with Caesarion? He strangled him. And that's how the last emperor of Egypt died. And it was not long ago. It was just around 30 years before Jesus came. So that's when we last had an Egyptian pharaoh, right? Just think of how things would have been different if Octavian had not acted so hastily. How things would have been different, especially for Africa. There would be who knows, there might have been a pharaoh today. But that's how the Egyptian pharaohs came to an end. The Ptolemaic dynasty came to an end. And that's, so when people become inconvenienced, we tend to change a lot because of that, and we destroy a lot of potential because of that. And that's why I gave that example. Another thing I wanted to give, the problem with taking women as, like what happened to Sharon. She was taken as an object, she became an inconvenience, and now she had to go. like what happened to Caesarean. He had to go. And when Caesarean, and when people go, like when Sharon went, the saddest part I feel is that she had no chance to correct her mistakes. We all deserve a chance to correct our mistakes. Sharon did not get that chance. Yes, she looked for money. Yeah, she did a lot of things, but who knows? Perhaps the baby could have changed everything. She never got that chance. You and I have a chance to change ourselves, to change our mistakes. Sharon never got that chance. There's the so we need chances in life, and I hope that we will all have chances in life. Okay, so let me move to another one. One of the problems that I have with this culture of people killing women and getting away with it, I'm not saying that Obado did that, but many people are killing women and getting away with it. I feel that it might become a cultural phenomenon, and I feel that that is dangerous. You get? Let me give a couple of statistics. In India, 2016 report showed that one woman is raped every 13 minutes. So by the time I'm finishing this video, before I started, there's a woman in India who was raped, and after I finish, within that new time frame, there'll be another woman who will be raped. And that's India. And it didn't get to this, it grew into this. It didn't, okay, what I'm saying is, it didn't come all of a sudden. The culture over there grew into it. Ethiopia, 60% of women in Ethiopia are subjected to violence, sexual violence, not just violence, but sexual violence. Again, we often feel that things cannot happen to us, but they can. And this idea of women dying just anytime, anywhere, there's no follow-up, it can happen to anyone, any woman, and it can become a culture. That's what I'm saying. South Africa is now being called the rape capital of the world. How did it get to that? By the time Shaka Zulu was there, was it the rape capital of the world? Right? By the time Mandela was there, was it the rape capital of the world? What happened to South Africa? What can happen to Kenya? You get? So that's my danger. That's the danger that I see. Another thing, another cultural phenomenon that can come from this kind of acts is that we can allow violent men to rule. And that's dangerous, because the way that Sharon died is very, very tragic. Another report that I saw, her stomach bowels, the bowels were just out. The fetus was oozing out of her. She died in a thicket, in the bush, hidden. That's a gruesome kind of death. 7-month-old lady raped. Just raped. And it was not once. Stabbed not once. You get? It's a very, very violent. And when you have this kind of men ruling, what happens? Just think about it. What happens? And the example that I want to give you is somebody like Idi Amin. What happened in Uganda? There's a report that says that around 80,000 people, no less than 80,000 people died, but the closest figure they have is kind of like 300,000. Some people have 300,000 people died. Another group has 500,000. Amnesty International, I think, has 500,000 people died under Idi Amin. And that's what happens when we have people who, when we let violent people get into power. Violence becomes a culture, and soon it will come to your doorstep. And right now you might say it's Sharon or whatever, she's far, she died, she was looking for money. But at the end of the day, the chickens come home to roost. They always come home to roost. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention, another culture that comes into place is that the law becomes useless. The law becomes useless. Right now, if you look at the Joey story, the one in the Monica Kimani murder case, right? Joey he's still in prison. Maribe got bail. Okoth Obado, he got bail. The other guys are still in remand. And the perception that grows is that when you're rich, you can get away with some stuff. Does that remind you of anything, or any story? It reminded me of George Orwell. And what was the story? The Animal Farm, where all animals are equal, but others are more equal than others. where the pigs would say that, yes, the harvest has come, everything is good, but we need more of it than you guys do, because we think more, we have more to do than you guys. And that's what happens in our society, where the law, it can work for everyone, but it works for more people, for some people more than it does for others. If you and I do something, then it's very different when they do something. And that's the danger of allowing these things to go unchecked. So let me get to the main part, because I'm close to finishing, don't worry. Let me get to the main part. The problem with this unholy alliance is that you have two people who can fight to the death for, let's say, for power, because it's for power. Now, why would they fight to the death? One, because they are easy targets. It's very, very easy to target William Ruto, because you just mentioned Weston, you mentioned all the maize scandal, you mentioned all this, you mentioned the ICC, you can mention all of these things, and it's very, very, very easy to target him, right? To get at him, because he has so many things. He has a large surface area, so you can hit at that very easily. Now, what happens from there? You get is that when you are an easy target, you actually become more hardened, because you're getting hits from all sides. You become more hardened. So to fight, you become a fighter. And having a fighter who has good moral values is okay, but having a fighter who does not have, that's a different kind of scenario. And that's why Genghis Khan used to win, because he was not only a fighter, but he was ruthless to the death. You fight, you win, right? And that's the problem in this case, because they'll fight to the death, and they're easy targets. You can hit them, and they just become stronger. You just need to finish. Okay, so I wanted to give an example of the example I'm saying is an Achilles heel. If you want to hit at Obado politically, kind of like what Raila is doing right now, you just hit at the Sharon story. Hit at it. He's a murderer. You don't have to prove it, you just have to say that he's a murderer. So that's one way of hitting him. I wanted to give that story of Achilles. What happened with Achilles is that his mother took him and put him in a fire, I think. But she held his heel. And the heel was the only part that did not get exposed to the fire. And so that was the only part that was not immortal. And when it comes to Obado, the part that is not immortal is Sharon. When it comes, and corruption, the ACC cases, and it comes to William Ruto, the part that is not immortal is the corruption cases in the ACC. And they're easy targets, so they'll protect that Achilles heel. They'll fight. Achilles, he was a fighter. He was a very, very good fighter, and he fought until the Battle of Troy, and that's when he got his match. But these guys will fight, because they know they have a weakness. Okay, another thing is that correcting the system leads to their doom. If you correct the system right now, let's say if you end corruption, what happens to William Ruto? What happens to Obado? So these are people who will get into power, who will ensure that the system will not be correct. Because if the system becomes correct, then they stand to lose their power, they stand to lose their wealth. And that is why this whole Unholy Alliance is very dangerous. It's very dangerous, right? And not just to these two guys, but anytime you see people who are, let's say, kind of like have stories of corruption, have stories of murders, have stories of, bad stories about them, this is what happens. They have to ensure that the system continues, because if they correct it, then bad things happen. And that's why Kenya has been the way it is, because we started with bad people, Kenyatas and what have you, and subsequently the others, they would not correct the system, because then if they correct the system, they lose their wealth, they lose their power. So the last part, the only way that Ruto can survive with all his money and stuff and power, and the only way Obado can really, really survive against this case, let's say the Sharon case, is by rising to power. Very ironic. The only way you can stop yourself from dropping is by rising to power, right? And that's what they'll do, and they'll fight for it. and they'll fight for it to the death. And that's dangerous for us because it means they have a lot to lose. When a man has a lot to lose, he fights bravely, he fights unrelentingly, he fights skillfully, and he fights viciously. And that's dangerous to us because we had clashes. And if you have people who cannot give up the fight, because giving up the fight means they lose everything, then what are clashes to them? They can just support them, and then, whatever happens, because they know that they cannot turn back. Because if they turn back and the system corrects, and we correct the system, they'll be in danger. You get? And that's why this alliance is unholy, right? And I wanted to give an example of Queen Elizabeth and Queen Mary of Scots. The only way Queen Elizabeth could survive was by killing the Queen of Scots. That's Queen Mary. The executioner hacked her head the first time. He missed. He hit her head. He tried to hack in her again, and then he cut a bit of some parts. Another part remained, so he did it a third time. Some say that Elizabeth ordered for that kind of execution so that the Queen of Scots could feel as much pain as possible. But by killing the Queen of Scots, she maintained her power. This unholy alliance is dangerous. Every unholy alliance in the country is dangerous. And this is my opinion why. I hope that you listen, and I hope that I see you tomorrow. Have a blessed day. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. I won't be late. Do not be late.